Much like members of a deluded cult, once the Washington establishment decides a scandal exists, no one can ever be convinced that it's bogus, all of it. Well, today, Democrats in Congress are demanding the appointment of a special counsel to investigate claims of Russian interference in the 2016 election, even though, as of tonight, no evidence of criminal interference has ever appeared, to put it clearly. Well, similarly, the Trump administration will not retract its claim that President Obama wiretapped the campaign, but also will not offer any evidence that it actually happened. Has fake news been joined by fake scandals? We're joined now by Fox News senior political analyst Brit Hume. Hey, Brit.
Hi, Tucker.
So if you're able to kind of drown out all the noise surrounding this Russia story, what's it really about at its core?
Well, this is fascinating in a way, because if you step back from it a little bit and you look at all that's been generated here, which is to say, we have a congressional investigation going on by the House Intelligence Committee and perhaps other committees as well. We have an Attorney General who has recused himself from any Justice Department investigations involving this matter. We have the calls now, as you just pointed out, for the appointment of a special prosecutor or a special counsel to carry out a supposedly independent investigation of this whole matter. And when you boil the whole matter down, it comes down to two parts. One is the Russians' attempts to interfere in the presidential campaign. There's really no evidence they interfered in the election itself, that is to say in the voting and the activities that take place surrounding that. So, and I think there is some indication the Russians tried to influence the campaign, most conspicuously by John Podesta's emails that were hacked and then leaked to the public, most of which were embarrassing, but there's no real sign that they had any decisive effect on the campaign. And that's part of it. The other part of it is the notion that there was collusion between the Trump campaign, as you pointed out, and the Russians. There is, so far as I can see, absolutely no evidence to that effect. None whatever. Yes, there's evidence that there may have been some contacts between people associated with the Trump campaign in some way and Russian officials. No evidence that any of that was improper, inappropriate, or in any way related to campaign activities. So basically we have an investigation which is rooted in something of which there is no evidence. Now, similarly, as you point out, the president's claim made over the weekend in his tweets that Obama ordered him wiretapped, or had him wiretapped, as he put it in one of his tweets, there's no evidence for that either. So we have this tremendous stir going on, and the media are really pressing very hard to get the Trump White House to answer for this claim that the president made, for which there appears to be no substantiation. In the meantime, of course, the media are merrily covering, with very serious and sober faces, this whole set of inquiries and so on that are going on into this possibility of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, which, as I say, and as you pointed out, there is absolutely no evidence. It is kind of a remarkable feat of political alchemy by the Democratic Party and its friends in the media to turn nothing into something.
Well, and there are, of course, legitimate criticisms of how the administration has behaved. This just isn't one of them. But meanwhile, while the scandal may be imaginary, Russia is a real country with nuclear weapons and a population over 100 million, and it's a player in the world, especially in Europe. What's the effect of all this on Russia, the actual place, and our relationship with it?
Well, this seems to me to be, kind of an irrelevancy that may become an obstacle in relations with Russia. It does seem to me, Tucker, pretty clear that part of the suspicion about this that has been raised, and that's all it is a suspicion, is rooted in the fact that President Trump had said during the campaign, and perhaps since as well, some rather kind things about Vladimir Putin, and suggested more than once that he could establish a working relationship with Putin in which we would be allies in the fight against ISIS, and perhaps in other things as well. That proposition that there can be this alliance seems to be somewhat in tatters right now. You have his UN ambassador more than once has been very critical of Russia publicly, and as far as we know, with his approval. And he has said himself as well that he doesn't know whether he would be able to have a good relationship with Vladimir Putin. He thinks he might not be able to, but he thinks it would be good if he did. Well, all that seems at this point rather innocent to me. So the question then arises is, how do we deal with Russia and the problems Russia causes around the world, and especially, as you note, in Europe? And that remains a wide open question, but that seems to be pretty much in the hands of people like Rex Tillerson and James Mattis and the people at the CIA, Mike Pompeo, and so on. So I don't think there's yet any reason to worry that there might be some inappropriately soft relationship between President Trump and Vladimir Putin. I don't think there's much of a relationship at all at this stage.
Doesn't seem like there is. So really quickly, to the wiretapping question, we know that people around Trump were surveilled by the U.S. government, Michael Flynn maybe among others. The president is in charge of the CIA. They're his employees. He's their supervisor. What prevents the White House from getting to the bottom of this fairly quickly and presenting the evidence?
Well, here's a couple of things to remember about this. This strikes me that such wiretaps as there were not related to some domestic investigation, but were a foreign policy matter, national security investigation. That requires a warrant from the so-called Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act court, which has to look at the possibility that there's probable cause and then issue it. Such warrants are not to be issued except in the rarest of circumstances against citizens of the United States, which does not, of course, preclude the possibility that in intercepting the phone calls, for example, of the Russian ambassador in Washington, that conversations with people close to Donald Trump might have occurred, as we believe we know they did in the case of General Flynn, who then proceeded to mislead the vice president about those conversations. The reason we know about them is there had to have been surveillance of the Russian ambassador, and Mr. Flynn, General Flynn, caught up in that. So we know that that happened. We also know that there was probably a criminal leak of that information, which is why we know about it.
Well, exactly.
But all of this is, and the idea that a president would be able to cause a wiretap to occur, which is legally not supposed to occur without the permission of a court, seems a touch far-fetched. And there's certainly no evidence that President Obama actually caused this to happen. Now, I know there are people that think that, you know, he gives a wink and a nod to the right people and that these things would not go on without his knowledge. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think these kind of things can go on without his knowledge, at least up until the point when intelligence is obtained thereby, which is then presented to him in the form of an intelligence report. But these agencies operate not entirely on their own, obviously. He's responsible for all of them, and they're responsive to him.
Right,
but he's not.
Autonomy.
He's simply, I mean, I don't know of a case when a president has ever been known to have ordered a wiretap.
Britt Hume, joining us live. Thanks a lot, Britt.
Good.
WikiLeaks may have done more than any other organization last year to destroy the Clinton campaign, thanks to the release of their massive trove of Democratic Party emails. Now they're trying to claim yet another scalp, the CIA. For more, we are joined tonight by Fox News correspondent Trace Gallagher. Hey, Trace.
Hey, Tucker, unlike the Edward Snowden leaks back in 2013 that revealed the National Security Agency was in fact spying on average Americans, today's document dump by WikiLeaks isn't about gathering info on Americans. It's about the tools and tactics being used by the Central Intelligence Agency to break into or circumvent various communication technologies. For example, experts who studied the leaked documents say the CIA, along with other U.S. and foreign agencies, found a way to hack into phones that use Google's Android technology, giving them the ability to collect voice and text message data from messaging apps like WhatsApp, Telegram, and Signal. Experts say it appears the CIA was able to hack devices prior to the encryption or secret code being applied. Google is looking into the matter, but it's interesting that one cybersecurity expert here in California says it appears that CIA hackers would cover their tracks by leaving electronic trails suggesting the hacks came from Iran, China, or Russia instead of the United States. It also appears that U.S. and British intel agencies developed a way to take controls of televisions connected to the internet, making it appear the TV was off when in fact it was recording conversations in the room. WikiLeaks reportedly admits the documents came from within the CIA, and that is a problem. Listen.
I just spoke to a former CIA officer who told me that this was really bad. He said that there would be a serious reckoning within the CIA, and he seemed to be surprised if there weren't. He said he would be surprised if people didn't lose their jobs over this.
And it's no secret the U.S., its allies, and adversaries are all trying to figure out ways to exploit the flaws in new technology. Today's leaks are just laying that out for us in detail. And WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange says there is more to come. Tucker.
You can bet on that. Trace Gallagher. Thanks, Trace. Well, last week, protesters ruined a speech by Charles Murray at Middlebury College. Well, it's a picture of students at Middlebury College in Vermont preventing a lecture by sociologist Charles Murray last week. Instead of choosing not to attend the lecture, or God forbid, listening to his ideas and then debating them, the students attacked him and even injured a professor, escorting Murray so badly that she went to the hospital. Well, thankfully, some professors are fed up with this. People using violence to silence ideas. Jay Perini is a longtime English professor at Middlebury, a novelist, a biographer, and he joins us now. Professor, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you, Tucker. It's good to be on your show.
So I doubt, I'm just guessing, you agree with Charles Murray. I don't think you're a figure on the right, but you seem...
Oh, God,
just
no.
Right, that's what I thought. And so, but you're distressed, I think I'm interpreting this correctly, by the unwillingness of students to hear ideas they disagree with. And so you've come up with a list of principles that really, I love them so much, I don't want to suck up too much, but they were great. Things like this.
Say nice things. Say nice things. Go ahead.
No, it's true. Only through the contest of clashing viewpoints do we have any hope of replacing mere opinion with knowledge. Exposure to controversial points of view does not constitute violence. A protest that prevents campus speakers from communicating with their audience is a coercive act. These all seem like obvious points, great points. Are they not commonly shared on your campus?
You know, actually, I think they are commonly shared. Dozens and dozens of my colleagues, I've been teaching for 41 years now, and I've never seen anything like this before, but most of my colleagues, I think, agree with these basic principles of free speech. I mean, this is just basically free speech 101. Nothing that I wrote with my great younger colleague, Keegan Callanan, in the political science department, nothing here is it's not brain surgery. You know, we were frustrated and horrified by what happened at Middlebury last Thursday and the shutting down of this speech by Dr. Murray. And we got together this weekend and said, you know, why don't we just hammer out what are the basic principles of free speech, more or less for ourselves, and then let's circulate it among the faculty and see if there's some agreement here. And, you know, it took us only an hour to sit down and say, well, what, you know, in 1776, America fought the battle over free speech. These are Enlightenment values, and I'm kind of a free speech fundamentalist, and I believe that the function of the university is to provide a place where those with every viewpoint, left, right, center, and now, of course, it's like the rainbow. There's so many, even on the right and the left, there's obviously a zillion different opinions. I think a university should be, if nothing else, a place, a space, shall we say that contemporary phrase, a space, where free discourse can happen, where ideas can clash, people can disagree, and I actually think we're at such an amazing inflection point in American culture right now, because I think people are, I know I am, utterly fed up with the coarseness, the incivility of discourse in the United States. I think we've come to a point, this inflection point, where we have to step back, all of us who are rational human beings, whatever our political viewpoints, whatever candidates or parties we stand for, and say to ourselves, what are the basic principles we agree on here? I mean, we organized ourselves as a nation a couple hundred years or more ago, saying this is a place where we get to talk freely about our ideas. We set up these universities based on Enlightenment principles, and we supposedly adhere to them. I mean, I hope and believe that my own classrooms are a place where students can challenge me and feel free to challenge me. They don't shut me down, and I never shut them down.
Amen. Well, I'm for that. There was one point in here that I thought was so wise, it stirred my heart, actually. You wrote, and I'm quoting, a good education produces modesty with respect to our own intellectual powers and opinions, as well as openness to considering contrary views. This is what is lacking in this debate, is modesty. People believe that their way is right and that no one else could have an alternative view. Do you think that modern university life inculcates that modesty in students?
Well, obviously it doesn't, and I think it's a problem. And I think it's why we have to go back, unfortunately, to Free Speech 101 and what is the purpose of the university. And I think inculcating modesty, why should we be modest? I mean, I have a lot to be modest about. I don't know that much. None of us do. You don't. I don't.
Exactly.
We all, Robert Frost, I did a biography of Frost 20 years ago, and I love his phrase. He said, we all proceed on insufficient knowledge.
Exactly.
And I think you proceed, I mean, here you are, I'm sure debating a million people, going over a lot of ideas. You proceed on insufficient knowledge. I'm not accusing you of that because...
No, you're right, I do. Of course.
I proceed in my life on insufficient knowledge, and that's why we have to be modest. And I mean, I think we have to actually teach people modesty.
Yes.
And I think that's one thing, that's where we have failed. And the problem is we're not really frankly, seeing modesty anywhere in the culture very often.
No, and that's the key to parenthood, is raising children who know what they don't know. Really quickly, we're almost out of time. How many of your colleagues signed this? What percentage would you say of the faculty signed this statement of belief?
I'd say we're certainly up to a quarter. We've left it open until March 11th or 12th, and every day we're getting another dozen or 2 dozen signatures. I forget what we're up to now, but dozens and dozens and dozens of my colleagues. And what's so interesting, when I looked over the signatories, I saw young people, old people. I saw people of color and white people. I saw people that I know are not hard left, but left. People who are not hard right, but right. People who are libertarians. I was really quite thrilled by this coming together. And I think, oh my goodness, we might be at the beginning of something quite wonderful in this culture. And maybe it only begins when you have a little conflict like we had here last week.
I think that's right. If you get to 65% of the faculty, I'm going to send my kids there. Thanks a lot, Professor.
Thank you, Tucker.
It was great.
We welcome your children.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Up next, we'll talk to a historian and farmer, Victor Davis Hanson, who just wrote an amazing article about why rural voters vote very differently from those in the cities and suburbs. Stay tuned.